Let's get started. We're just going to start at the top of court behavior. Whoever's calling, let's place dot until the free plays part. Okay? Alright. From the top, a court settles in an area large enough to support their resource needs, but only defends those resources, not the land that it's on. For one of the shortest little blips in this profile, this gets a lot of questions, so this might need a second. Essentially, what this means is, for example, this court might decide that this whole grassy area, the grassland lake, the grassland crater, and such and so forth, is our territory. But we don't care who moves through it. We're pretty chill, and essentially when we meet new species, we're more interested in how they behave, and how they interact with us than we are in immediately telling them to get on. So that means a few different things. That means herbivores are completely welcome. We do not care that they're here. We can hunt them, of course. But as far as resources, they're unlikely to use anything that we need, except perhaps nesting materials and water. Right now, water isn't an issue because we've turned off the water disappearing on us. But in the future, that may not be true anymore once we figure things out. So water could be a resource that in dry season, maybe, or if it's getting particularly low, or if we're a very big court, we would want to defend that. Nesting materials are also up for grabs. Resources here just means anything that you need for, your daily life. So folks have had questions about their nests. Can we defend our nests? Yeah, if somebody you don't know, even a herbivore, gets too close to it, you can defend that as a resource because you absolutely need it for your day-to-day life. What you're not going to do, though, even with carnivores, is try to steer them away from like areas of the territory that you consider to be like the heart of your territory. Heart of the territory doesn't really exist. There's nothing specified in the profile about that. There's nothing specified either about where you should or should not be nesting. So in theory, technically, I could have my nest on this side of the territory, and somebody else could have theirs clear across the other side. It might not be, very logistically sound when we're trying to raise babies together and, take food places. So I can't see that happening often, but it could happen. And what that amounts to is that there's not a heart of the territory that other creatures are not allowed into. This is free roaming chickens is what we are. So as far as how to defend that, first thing you're likely to try, especially if you don't know the species, is just to test their temperament, and we'll talk about that more later when we get to that section. But essentially, I'm just going to try to annoy them and see how they react to me. If they react poorly, then I've realized that I'm going to have an issue trying to get them to leave my resources alone. So I could tail fin at them, I could yell at them, especially if I think I couldn't win a fight against them. Then I'm going to try to annoy them out first. If that doesn't work, and I still think that I can't win a fight, well, then I'm stuck. Yeah, we'll definitely get to that section, Dino, when we're talking about courting and parenting. But if I think I can win a fight, and I'm defending my resources, I'm still probably just going to try to run them out first, honestly. That seems most realistic to me. I'm not going to get into a fight if I don't have to get into a fight. But if they won't leave, then, of course, per game rules, a challenge is followed by a mock hit. One thing I've noticed with these guys is because they're so small, it can be a little hard to see a mock hit if it's coming from somewhere I'm not expecting. Like, there's so many of us, right? If I deliver a mock hit and the rest of you don't, it can be kind of hard to see. So just keeping that in mind, giving plenty of time for the other person to notice that that has happened, and being a little brave and getting up there in the front and delivering that mock hit wide in the open where they can see it. But yeah, so that's defending. It really only happens if I witness that you're taking something that I need. The enforcer of a court. Next bullet point here is a highly trusted individual and often one of the eldest offspring of the ruling pair. However, any Latenivenatrix whom the ruling pair trusts could be chosen as the enforcer. A ruling pair can run a court without an enforcer if they're very distrusting or do not have a good candidate for the position. However, this makes running the court much harder, and a ruling pair usually does not wish to rule without an enforcer for long. So, the enforcer, we've had lots of questions about what does trusted mean? And I see a lot of like trusted versus untrusted, meaning like, I don't like you near me is untrusted. That's not necessarily the way I was thinking of it. If you can think of a better way to word it, feel free to share it with me. But more so what I was thinking of when I wrote that was that there is a particular job that the oligarchy has to, I guess, carry out. Most of that job is social. So when we actually get to looking at what the oligarchy does in later sections, we're going to see most of what they do is decide when they should accept challenges and not. Breaking up spats, breaking up fights. And most of that is having a good head on your shoulders, not being too aggressive, and, you know, being the kind of person who can, or the kind of Latin, I guess, who can de-escalate a situation, who can walk into a fight and say, nope, everybody calm down. Given that, what trusted means is I'm going to choose somebody who's that. I'm going to choose someone who's not too aggressive. Someone who makes, you know, smart decisions, doesn't start fights when I, as the ruling pair, think they should not be started. And is able to calm other people down. There's a section in here that says, you know, you can't support others when they're bickering, but you can, like, console them and try to calm them down. So maybe even if I see a Latin who's continually doing that and always trying to keep people calm, then that might be the kind of person I would choose. But I've also seen lots of questions about how would you go about picking an enforcer. The profile doesn't specify that. That's kind of left open for you to decide what makes the most intuitive sense to you. But I thought we could go over some ways that might look. So, what we're going to do here, we're going to keep it to offspring for today, just to keep it simple, but remembering that it could be any Latin that I decide. Where's my not wife? Spoon, where are you? There you are. I see you. Weef, come join me. Okay. And where are my offspring? Yeesh. Okay. So, some different ways that this could play out. I could decide that I already think one of these is more trustworthy for the job than the other. So let me I'm just going to pick one of those and try to signal to them that I want them to walk away with me. Yay! They did it. Okay, now we're going to go do some things together. And I'm just going to see how they handle it. So, where are my URs? There you are. Give you a little sniff snarf. Give him a little sniff snarf. And then once they're interacting, I'm just going to walk away and see what they do. Okay. I'm observing. Sweet. If I'm not too satisfied with that, I might keep looking, or I might keep testing, or I might give them some chirps because I'm satisfied with it, some little positive reinforcement. Another thing that I could do is I've got 2 kiddos here. I could test both of them. I could take them both around with me and see how that works. An RP who's more aggressive about it might just pick that person and decide, you're following me the entire time that I'm working. You're going to shadow. Yes, Cloudy, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So, expect that some confusion will happen. But some things you can do to kind of settle that down a little bit is honestly just your presence, I think, makes a lot of difference. In the first few times that I have a new enforcer, Turtle, you're the new enforcer, I guess. But I just picked one. The first few times that this person is going around to do their job on their own, I'm not going to make them do it on their own. One of us is going to follow you. Wherever you go, I go. Now, the profile doesn't specify this, so if you can think of a better way to do it, more power to you. But the ruling pair is the only one with the built-in authority for people to be listening to them. So if I'm not showing that I back this person, or my wife isn't, if Spoon is not backing them, then they're going to have a really hard time. So just keeping in mind that your third party, your enforcer, is an extension of you. So whatever you got to do to make sure that they have the introduction they need to the court, and the support that they need, the encouragement that they need, is what you got to do to make sure that confusion dies down, so people aren't fighting your enforcer on it. Okay, that's my brief explanation of enforcer, but I know there have been lots of questions on that in the past. So before we move forward, I want to open it up to questions. Does anybody have scenarios or questions that they want to ask? Okay, while we're waiting for a second, I'm going to go grab water. What if an enforcer does something the dominant doesn't like? Ooh, good question. I mean, ideally, of course, you've done the testing and the time to figure out if this Laten is going to do that to you, and hopefully pick someone who isn't. But if it does happen, I mean, to some degree, we should keep in mind that just in the function of the game, you have to be able to change who you've picked. Somebody might disappear and never join your sessions again. Somebody might prove a bad fit. Somebody might decide they don't actually enjoy playing an enforcer because it's too stressful for them. Or, in the same category, an enforcer might do something you don't like. In which case, scolding and trying to correct them, absolutely. We'll talk about it in later portions of the profile, but you're allowed to even go as far as exiling somebody who continually disobeys you. And it is also your job as the oligarchy, so including the ruling pair, to scold members of your court who are not performing up to your expectations. That includes the enforcer. If they're not up to snuff, you can absolutely step in and scold them. And if it keeps escalating too far, get rid of them. Pick somebody else. Last thing you need as the ruling pair is for somebody to constantly be undermining you. Especially if that somebody is supposed to be upholding what you think is the standard for your court. What if a fight for the role? I don't think that Latens of the court should be bickering over the role of enforcer, because it's not their decision. You know, you can bicker over courtship because two people are deciding to court the same Laten or something like that, but it's ultimately the ruling pair's decision who the enforcer is. So if anything, sucking up to the ruling pair maybe, or just really doing your best to follow them, do exactly what they do, show that you're the right fit for it. Maybe you would get annoyed with each other for constantly being in each other's space if you were both trying to do that at the same time, but there really, I don't think, should be any bickering. Definitely no challenges over it. It's not a position you can fight for. It's a position you're chosen for. What would one do if they find a pair that should not be nesting? How'd they go around that after the chickens shoot off? How would they react? Okay, so that sounds like a parenting section question, so I'm gonna hold that question for now. And Dino, if we don't discuss that and answer it to your satisfaction when we get there, definitely ask it again. Yeah, for sure. Okay, maybe we can go right along then. Next point, the oligarchy ensures the smooth running of the court, will exile any members, that's what I was just talking about. Amazing. Who continually disobey, prove unmanageable, or do not contribute to the court. They tend to be more patient with relatives of the ruling pair. However, and if resources are high, those who do not contribute may be tolerated for a time. So essentially this just means the power is in your hands. Oligarchy. Oligarchy as a whole. Notice it says oligarchy, not ruling pair. So the enforcer has the power to exile. Obviously, exiling a Laten and then your ruling pair not agreeing with you could cause a pretty big rift. So you might want to make sure that you take your time, check in with each other, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, the enforcer has the right. If a member of the court is continually disobeying, so that means multiple times. We're not looking for, like, one Laten, sassed the enforcer one time, and so now they get exiled. Multiple disobediences would have to occur. If they prove unmanageable, so I'm constantly trying to quiet them down in disputes or spats or bickerings, and they're just constantly in fights. Then that might be a problem to exile over. Or if they don't contribute. So if I see them running off constantly and they don't do anything, they don't come back with food, they don't they're not supplying my children when I nest, that sort of thing. Over time, then I might exile that Laten as well. But my relatives, I love my relatives, so I might be more patient with them than I am with unrelateds. And if resources are high, I might not notice as much if somebody's not bringing back food whenever they leave, or, if they're not contributing to feeding babies, because we all have enough. So they might be allowed to linger for a time, but then as soon as resources get scarce again, that Laten's gotta go, because they're just a mouth to feed. I saw a question. What happens when a Laten is exiled? Yeah, okay, so technically, the profile does not say that you cannot come back after exile. Technically. It's not in there. So, you could try. But, if we think about it, if I'm the ruling pair and I exiled somebody for continually disobeying me, I'm not going to want them back. So they come back, and I remember who they are. I'm probably not going to let them back in. But I mean, yeah, socializing in assemblies, that kind of thing. That's fine. That's all perfectly fine. Yeah, exactly. They would only be chased out again if they were stealing resources. So essentially, once they're exiled, they become an unrelated. At least for the purposes of assembly. Like, I don't want them here. I will assemble with them just like I would with anybody, but I'm not going to give them any more leeway than I would give anybody else. So if they start taking resources, I'll run them out. We're able to leave on our own and come back with stuff, or do we go off in small groups as a whole pack? Okay. Let's actually get into the next session for that. So, court interspecies behavior. How do we behave with each other? Because I think we're going to answer that question, actually, Kami. Relationships with the other Latenivenatrix are formed over time by trial and error. Intelligent and clever, they will approach any unfamiliar Latenivenatrix with a mixture of friendly vocal calls and games, only trusting that individual once they're determined to be friendly. So essentially what this means is when I meet someone I don't know, can I get, let's see, Chad, can you come over here for a second? You're gonna be a pretend unrelated that I don't know for Chad. Get over here, Chad. I'm gonna pretend I don't know you. So I'm going to greet you with friendly calls, and I'm going to play some games. But the point of these games is for me to see if you're nice. I don't know you. You might not be nice. I don't know. So I'm just going to check it out. Let me say hello. Oh. They're not calling me back. See you again. Do they like playing? Whee! Oh, nope, they don't. They're not friendly. So, thanks, Chad. That's basically the vibe. I've seen some questions about, again, what does like the trust mean there? It essentially means that I just don't know until I try. Yeah, absolutely. The unrelated can also initiate games because that stuff is also under the solitary sections. Under the solitary section, it still says you're gonna greet with friendly calls and games. So essentially both sides are looking at each other going, are you nice? Are you new friend? But then as soon as it's new friend time, it's new friend time. So if that Latin had given me friendly calls, or reacted well to play, etc., then we would have just started playing. We would have hung out. If you're, a little more reticent as a Latin, a little more stoic, a little less chirps and dances all day long, that's okay too. But just keep in mind that other Latins may not perceive you as friendly. So they may perceive that as like not an immediate yay, and more of a I'm not so sure. I don't trust them because they're not showing me that they're nice, if that makes sense. So it pounce upon playfully, but is willing to play other things like chasing games or throwing. Yeah, so for that, I would say since these two Latins are presumably meeting each other for the first time, first impressions are the best and most important impressions. For example, I have a Latin who loves pouncing others, and it's always friendly, it's always a game, but he just loves it. Not everybody likes that. For him, when he pounces somebody and they don't react well to it, that feels to him like a rejection moment. So he's like, oh, okay, not friendly. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's true, but from his perspective, it is. So if your Latin does not immediately respond well to whatever the other person is using as a play, within reason, if they're biting you, then that's not play. But if your Latin doesn't immediately respond well, then they can be like, oh, they're not friendly and not play with you. And that's, within their rights. But another Latin might have a perfectly good time with your Latin because they didn't pounce you first. UR runs into a court or albino runs into an unrelated. How would they react? Same way. If you look under the solitary section, it's still going to say greet with friendly calls and games. Every Latin does this. Unless they're maladaptive and they just don't know to do that, or they're unfriendly or something. Yeah, every Latin greets that way. And, if things just don't go well, you can just walk away. Like, I just walked away. How easy is it to recognize females from males? It's not. There's no way to tell. There's no dimorphism whatsoever. Whoever you're interacting with, is a potential to court, is a potential friend, is a potential, any number of things. And you don't know what sex they are. Yeah. Certain parts of this profile are designed for chaos. Oh yeah, absolutely. We will get to that, Connie. Can Latins get defensive when pounced by a stranger and they don't like it, such as barking or biting or even hissing? Absolutely. Is that a little out of profile? Yes. But remember, as long as it's realistic, you can have a Latin or a dino in general that is maladaptive or has a disorder or has some sort of stress or trauma from past events. That's all okay as long as it's realistic. And per game rules, I can challenge for my personal space. So if I feel that my personal space has been threatened, then absolutely, I can react to challenge for that personal space. I would not, however, bite without challenging first, because if I'm biting without challenging first, that's a hunt. And these guys are not cannibals, so we can't hunt each other. Does that make sense, Tuna? Yeah, just challenge first, and then if they don't leave you alone, then you can bite them. Strange for Latin to bark while playing. Maybe. Could be. Could be normal for that court. So we'll get to the calls thing when we get to the responsibilities of the oligarchy, but each court sets different calls for different things. So there could be a court where it's perfectly normal to be that loud while playing. But since it's not a friendly call straight up, there's probably going to be a lot of Latins who are a little put off by that, or at least don't know what you're doing until they learn. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move forward, but if you guys have questions, go ahead and keep putting them in there. This next session, I was actually discussing with somebody in profile questions today that I will probably be rewording this in the solitary section, but for the court section, it should be right. Over time, that sense of trust, the trust between two who have just met each other, grows by eating, hunting, and defending together. This means that even young family members may not be trusted as much as a long-term unrelated member. The longer a relationship lasts, the more likely the two individuals have formed particular favorite calls, activities, and greetings. Court Latenivenatrix will work together to complete tasks like caring for whelps and hunting. So I forget who it was, but somebody was asking a question earlier about will we go off on our own and such. The oligarchy will set certain summoning calls and body language to delegate tasks. But any member of the court can lead and delegate tasks with those calls once they've learned them. If tasks are not handled to the oligarchy's liking, they may scold and teach the members of the court who were responsible. So, to that I would say it's unusual for a Latin to run off on their own to complete a task. You could run off on your own to do something else, like maybe you're building your nest to propose to your beau. Or you're just exploring or something like that, or maybe you're even getting broody and there aren't enough Latins for you to, actually court someone around here, so you're trying to run around and spread your scent markings and see if somebody could be attracted to the area. Those are all good reasons to go off on your own. But for the most part, when tasks are being performed, Latins are going to go out in groups. The oligarchy is going to set what calls are delegated for each task. That could be as complicated or as simple as you want it to be, honestly. A lot of times people just default to, you know, if I'm broadcasting, then that means come. But some Latins are going to get fancier with that. I have a ruling pair member who uses the 3 call to summon for hunts. And each court gets to be different. So whenever your oligarchy decides the calls are for, they're going to teach those to the court. And then the members of the court can use them themselves. So in that example, for example, if I'm using a 3 call to hunt, the rest of the court learns that. They can start calling for hunts now. Doesn't have to be me every time. But rather than go off and hunt on my own, I'm more than likely going to call for somebody else to come with me. You know, critters are fine. But tasks tend to be delegated to groups. It's okay, Dano. You got this. Oh yeah, I mean, you can do this on your own. You can. It would just be unusual, especially if I'm hunting something that's bigger than a critter. If I'm providing for babies or something like that, then we're probably all doing it at the same time. So we're all delegating the task already. If I'm just eating for myself, then yeah, maybe I go hunt a critter by myself. That's fine. But that's not really delegating a task. That's just me living my life. Plus, I mean, at the end of the day, especially in big courts, you know, sometimes we all need a little break to ourselves with some quiet to recuperate. No, you're okay. We trust you to be able to defend yourself on your solo McDonald's run. Okie dokie. Courts may peacefully congregate with other courts, dispersal groups, and straggler solitary Latenivenatrix or courting pairs in what is called an assembly. This is important. I've seen this be misunderstood a few times. This doesn't mean that you can only have an assembly when there's 2 courts. That means any combination of Latins. So if a court meets a singular solitary straggler Latin, that is now an assembly. If a dispersal group meets a court, that is now an assembly. If a courting pair meets a solitary Latin, that is briefly an assembly. We'll get to that in a second. But essentially, any congregation of Latins who are not grouped together is an assembly. And they're going to socialize with each other until somebody gets insulted or bothered or needs to go hunt something away from people's notice. Assemblies offer opportunities for the court to meet unrelated Latenivenatrix, unpaired Latenivenatrix who are dissatisfied with the court or their courting opportunities may also take this opportunity to join other courts during assemblies. Assemblies cannot challenge, hunt, or respond to being hunted as one entity. They must do so as the groups they arrived in, or as solitary individuals. So we can't mob like Danons, essentially. An assembly does not mean that you are my family. It just means that we are grouping in the neighborhood cul-de-sac for a second. But if a ruling pair with young offspring are out and see a UR, how will they react? It's an assembly. We are now Latins who are ungrouped, meeting each other in the wilds. We're going to socialize. We're going to do the thing that we did earlier. We're going to greet you and try to play some games. And if you don't react positively, I'm skedaddling with my kids, man. Getting on out of there. Because you don't seem friendly if you don't respond to me in a friendly fashion. But it's not any different is what I'm getting at. Not any different whatsoever. Did we actually see something over there, guys? Do I need to... quit talking and react to something. Normally I wouldn't ask people to call anything out, but if we gotta interact with something, I need to focus. Okay. Sweet. Okay, so what I'd like to do next, before we move on to courting, let's practice assembling. I want us to split into 2 groups. So, my wife, my beautiful spoon, my wife for the day. If you would go, like, across from me, we're gonna split into 2 groups. We need a fork group and a spoon group. Whee! Okay. We are going to pretend that we are assembling. So I'm going to greet you first. I see some folks sneaking up. And I hear friendly calls. That's what I want. Oh, but then I hear that. And we bolt. Woo! That was actually pretty perfect. Assemblies don't always last very long. I've seen them last, you know, a really long time. If the Latens are willing to go and hunt out of sight where they can't be spotted, and they're all friendly and they're all getting along, then it can go really well. But as soon as somebody gets insulted or miffed or spooked or something, which can happen pretty easily because courts sometimes have different calls to react to each other. As soon as that happens, we bolt. Yeah, let's do that. Alright, to make this easier, I'm gonna be the solo Laten. You guys can be the court for a second. I secede my rights as ruling pair for the next 2 minutes. Who's your daddy? Since I'm solo, I'm probably not going to bolt into the middle of an entire group just yet. But I found somebody who's friendly. Everybody else has noticed. Yay! So everybody's giving me games and jiggles and 2 calls, so I'm happy. But I got pounced and I don't like that much, so bye! Now that said, we'll get into courting and stuff and we'll talk about, you know, actually grouping someone in. I think we had a question about that a second ago as well. But, you know, for the sake of argument, if somebody who was in that assembly got a good look at me and was like, yeah, I like them, they could follow me, and if they're offspring, they could try to group me in, despite the fact that I left. That's also perfectly acceptable. Okay, I return! Alright. The one thing that I will say is sometimes a little confusing is when you meet a courting pair. We're not going to be going over courting pair behavior today just because we've only really got time for the court behavior. But in the courting pair behavior section, it does say that courting pairs rarely join assemblies. They don't like to because if they're still a courting pair, that means that they're grouped together, they're courting, but they haven't nested yet. And at that point, anybody they run into is competition. That person could potentially take away the Laten I'm trying to court. So unless I'm unhappy with the Laten I'm trying to court and I'm willing to trade up, I'm probably not going to join an assembly as a courting pair. What that means for a court is if you do see two Latens together, or I guess even one Laten, maybe you don't see the other one, and they are standoffish, and they're flapping at you, and they're backing away from you, and they don't really want you around, they don't want to be around you, you know, just walk away. Or if you see them eating your resources, drive them out. Could be any number of reasons for that, but one good, solid, really normal reason is that they might be a courting pair and they actually don't want to do anything with you. Okay. Any further questions on assemblies before we move into courtship? Sweet. Alright, let's go. Okay. Into the fray. Here's our two longest sections, guys. If an entire court is not acting friendly, that's weird. You know, if it's really obvious they're being unfriendly to you, and all of them are being unfriendly to you, I would maybe ask names. Because that's somewhat out of profile behavior. Unless they have some reason for it that you don't know, and they might be able to provide you that reason. But an entire court shouldn't be behaving out of profile. That would be a no-go. But if there's like one or two members in the court who are being unfriendly towards you and the rest of them are being friendly, that's probably normal. If an unrelated isn't interested but related keep following. I mean, again, so per game rules, you can challenge for your personal space at any time. So if you're being followed or something and you don't want to be, yep, just let them know. Give them a nice little challenge. Be prepared for them to maybe accept back, though. Maybe run. If a Laten bites an individual more than 1 to 2, would they be seen as overly aggressive and shunned? Yeah, that's out of profile behavior. If it's a member of the oligarchy and they're biting more than 1 or 2 times, same. That's out of profile behavior. And as a ruling pair, I would be looking really closely at that. Correcting it for sure, but if it continues, they're out of that position. Because like we discussed earlier, picking someone for enforcer has to do mostly with social skills. Are you too aggressive? Are you going to make rash decisions? Are you going to escalate problems instead of de-escalating them? So if you're showing hyper-aggression out of profile, I can't keep you as an enforcer for sure. An illegal child coming back to socialize. Yeah, sure. So I mean that's an exile situation, right? So just like we talked earlier, if someone's exiled, they're just considered outside of your court now. And you would treat them the same way you would treat any other Laten that you were assemblying with. If one of your ruling pair is behaving hyper-aggressively, leave the court. Yep. Leave. If you feel like it's unrealistic, then that's potentially a discussion with them, and then if they don't understand what you're saying, maybe a report situation. But if it's just too aggressive for you, if they are somehow a maladaptive Laten who has risen to that status, then leave. you know? That's not a home that you want to stay in. There are wider and better worlds out there for you, my friend. Alrighty. Okay, courting. Let's get into this so we have plenty of time. Latenivenatrix become broody if they are fully adult, feel safe, and have plenty of resources and time for play. All of the above for this. You have to be fully adult, so most of the time for rules, sub-adult counts. For Latins, that's not true. You have to be fully adult, fully grown, before you will start to feel broody. You also have to feel safe. So if there have been threats in your area, or I don't know, you've been getting into a lot of bickering lately, you're trying to make your nest, and everybody keeps stealing all your nesting materials. Oh no. You might lose that broodiness pretty fast. And have plenty of resources and time for play. So if everything's kind of going well, but you're having to run yourself into the ground to do it, and you're not getting time to socialize, and you're not getting time to play, for a Latin, that's going to feel like things aren't safe. So you simply would not be broody under those conditions. Once you are broody, you're gonna scent mark in some prominent places within your territories. You can go rub on some rocks and trees to attract anybody who's receptive, and that way you can kind of tell who is receptive, right? If you're looking around and you're seeing 3 different folks are continually running off and rubbing on things, rubbing on trees, rubbing on rocks, then those are your courting targets. You obviously might make a mistake and try to court somebody who's not receptive, but they'll let you know. And if you're not finding that there are enough folks receptive within your court, you might go farther and farther to do those scent marks in the hopes that someone will notice you. What if a Latin was content with having no eggs? So, 2-part answer to that question. That wouldn't, strictly speaking, happen. You would want eggs. But, depending on the situation you're in the court, that desire for kiddos might be satisfied by other things. So you would get broody in that situation unless you had, like, I don't know, a hormonal imbalance or some disorder of some kind. In which case, that's fine. You know, you just don't ever display the broody behavior. And so nobody ever thinks that you're receptive, you know? Yeah, but a normal Latin will get broody, and then, you know, from there, whatever happens, happens. Okay. Offspring that find an unrelated they are interested in courting. We'll group this Latenivenatrix into the court and then bring them to the oligarchy. Oligarchy will inspect them and either confirm or deny their right to stay. This can be a stressful time, as all 3 members of the oligarchy must approve an unrelated to stay. So we're gonna play this out in a second with somebody, so we can get the step-by-step process. But there is a process for this that has about 3 steps to it. First thing is only offspring can group somebody in. So if you're a grandchild and you find an unrelated that you're interested in, more power to you. Best get your sneaky shoes on, but you don't group them in. You're gonna stay sneaky wherever you are ungrouped. If you're an offspring and you find somebody and you want to court them, then you group them in, and then you bring them to the oligarchy. That's your next step. You're gonna bring them yourself, so you're escorting them over there. Problem is, there's 3 members of that oligarchy, and they all have to sign off on that Latin to stay. And remember, the enforcer has the right to exile if they see fit. So This can be kind of a stressful time because at any point, one of those three who could decide, no, that guy can't stay. Once they've met all three, though, and all three have been kind of like, yeah, okay, sure, then they can stay into the court and begin being tested for courtship and stuff like that. So we're gonna play this out here for a second. Turble, you were my enforcer. So let's have Kinesis. Can you be our just random unrelated that we're gonna pretend is ungrouped? You can be wherever you want. Yeah, exactly. Friendly calls. And then I need an offspring. Which one is an offspring? Nee, were you an offspring? Ah, and Shad. Okay. Sweet. One of you offsprings needs to go be interested in old Caduceus over there. And then oligarchy, we're just gonna be about our business. We're gonna be doing whatever. Matter of fact, I'm gonna come eat something because I'm about to starve. Okay. Offspring who is interested in Caduceus over there. You get to greet them with your friendly calls and you're playing. Seeing if you like each other. Seeing if they're friendly. Once you decide, yeah, I kind of actually like the looks of this one, you can group them. Maybe give them a little nuzzle so they know to follow you. And then bring them on back to introduce them to us. I love how everybody else just descends into the chaos of playing. Accurate. Sweet. Okay, so now that we've noticed you're here, the good thing is you were brought to me by my offspring, so I know exactly why you're here. This isn't an assembly anymore. This is me inspecting you. I might give you a few sniffs, look you over. You're a little bright, but you're not albino, so I guess you'll do. I'm looking for injuries. I'm looking for illness. I'm definitely checking to see if they're albino. I could, if I wanted to, and I were pressed because I didn't have any other URs, let in an albino. But once they're in, nobody's going to court them unless they're desperate. So if I have other options, I'm just going to run off an albino, most likely. This one does have some color, so I'm okay for it. Letting them in. In general, when I want to say that I've let somebody in, I'm either going to give them a friendly call or shake. And then I'm just going to walk away, because I'm not interested in them. I don't know who they are. I'm just letting them stay. Now, let's assume for the sake of argument, I notice that old Canis over here has a limp or something. Doop. Oh, that's good. Thank you. I might test them a little bit more thoroughly. Just to see. Yeah. Oh, no. I don't know about this one. Whichever kid brought me this one brought me a bum Latin. In that case, I really don't want them to stay. So, me or another member of the oligarchy is probably going to run them off now. And he immediately forgets that he has a limp. And at that point, of course, they would need to ungroup, but Kinesis is saved by the tutorial. They can stay. What if the kid who brought the unrelated argued? They can certainly argue. My decision is still final. So at that point, they can either follow the unrelated, or they can choose to stay and be unhappy. That's okay. I'll probably try to comfort them, despite the fact that it's my fault they're sad. If they do that a lot, though, if I notice that they're always bringing me unrelateds and then I'm disapproving of them and then they're arguing with me, then I'm probably going to exile that kid. It depends on the type of leader, I'm going to say, is the short answer, but the more specific answer is that there's really not much of a reason to accept one unless they give me a reason. So, for example, I have seen a situation before where there was a Latin who was clearly sickly, as they could not, like, I think what it was is they couldn't jump. But from observing them and watching them around, I was able to see that they were still hunting things just fine before my kid ever brought them to me. So I knew that they couldn't jump, but I also knew that it really wasn't that big a deal. So I wound up letting that one in. But if I have any reason to think that they're not going to be able to hold their own weight, then I'm probably not going to let them in. Yeah. What happens if only one of the oligarchy are online? Are they temporarily let in, but need to be inspected? Yes, exactly. So, I mean, technically, none of the oligarchy have to be online for an unrelated to be grouped. Just need an offspring for that. And then as soon as the oligarchy is available, they'll be introduced and inspected. So, I don't know, in a situation where you grouped while there were no oligarchy online, then one oligarchy member joined next session, and then another one the next session, and another one the next session, it could take a while to be fully allowed to stay. But yes, that is essentially what would happen. They would be there, but during that stressful time, they would be waiting to be approved to stay by everybody. Alrighty. Unrelateds can also observe a court long enough to learn who the oligarchy is, and then introduce themselves if they wish. So, if you're an unrelated and you're having trouble catching the interest of an offspring, but you know you're an excellent catch, I mean, what's going on here? You can also, just observe the court and see if you can figure out who the oligarchy is, and then introduce yourself directly. Problem with this is it gets a little confusing. Right? This is looking like an assembly if you try this with the oligarchy. So they're probably going to greet you in a friendly way, and they might play with you, but then they're going to move right along. And if you keep trying to follow them and get them to inspect you, you might end up pushing their buttons. So, the second part of this bullet point says, however, the oligarchy has a higher likelihood of driving such an unrelated away due to suspicion, unless they are just an excellent candidate. So, if you know you're gorgeous, and you want to go for this, more power to you, but they might get confused about what you're trying to do, and wind up pushing you away, or even challenging you for personal space. So, it's a risk to do it that way, if that makes sense. Oligarchy will conduct temperament and fitness tests on new unrelateds. Once satisfied, they will allow them to freely court. Only offspring of the ruling pair and approved unrelateds are permitted to court each other. The entire court will scold and harass those who are courting when they shouldn't be. So essentially what that means is once you are allowed to stay by all members of the oligarchy, it's not over yet. We've also now got to conduct whatever tests we deem necessary to make sure that you're, a well-adjusted, healthy Latin, and you're good for my kids. And all 3 members of the oligarchy help out with this. So each member is probably going to form their own opinion of you. And that does make things a little bit more difficult, because there's now 3 different people to please. But, as long as your Latin is healthy and, attentive, follows directions, and pulls their weight, odds are good that it's going to be fine. They're not looking for, like, the world's best Latin. They're looking to keep out the world's worst Latin. So if you're failing tests, you gotta go. But other than that, it's just a process that might take some time, since there's 3 people testing you. And those are temperament and fitness tests. So if we're finding that you're super sassy all the time, or you don't follow directions, or for the life of us, we cannot teach you which calls we use to delegate tasks, within reason, even that could be a reason to send you packing and say, no, sorry, you're not good enough for my kids. Because if I can't communicate with you, I'm going to have a hard time getting you to do what I need. If unrelateds seem to be courting before they have been approved to do so, maybe like they've just entered, and everybody knows that they haven't been tested yet, they're brand new, the entire court can step in to scold them away from courting when they shouldn't be. So that's not just the oligarchy's job. You can also get in on that. What happens if the Latin that's observing gets caught? Yeah. Are fitness tests, taking them on hunts often, or playing games with them, or both? I would say both. And it's kind of up to the oligarchy's personalities as well. I have one that really prizes being able to jump. And so one day, if he runs his own court, he's probably going to test people's ability to jump cliffs and not hurt themselves. So that could also be a fitness test. So games, hunts. I had one that would do agility courses. So he would like run in between trees or in between rocks, and just see if the unrelated could keep up with him without running into the rocks. So whatever you can think of. Let's see. What would the court do if they find a pair that should not be pairing with a nest, I assume? After the kid is shooed off, of course, what would the court do to the pair, as Latins don't want to lose family? Yeah, we'll get to that a little bit, but if a successful pair has already happened, or they seem super bonded to each other, they're going to get scolded, but they're not going to try to break them up. But odds are good, if it's an illegal pairing that continues to be illegal. Like, if it's my relative, they're not supposed to be, having kids at all. So if they continue having kids and I'm finding out about it, then that's continued disobedience. And so I'm going to exile them for that eventually. But if it's my offspring and they just paired with somebody they weren't supposed to, I'm going to scold them for it. But technically it's a pairing now, and I don't want to lose my kid. And they can have kids now as an offspring that has paired without there being a problem. So there's not really a continued disobedience there. Kind of have to let that go. But they might take a little while to earn my trust back. I'm certainly not going to make them my enforcer. Would offspring be scolded as well if they started courting a new UR who isn't fully accepted? Potentially. I think since they're my offspring, I'm more likely to blame the unrelated for that. But if I see they're continually doing it with this unrelated and now that unrelated, and oh gosh, I can't stop them from doing it, well, now I know who the problem is. So I will absolutely scold them. Okay, is it instinctive that the whole court knows what members can or cannot court? They know without example that grandchildren cannot court, so the first time they see that, they correct it. So it's such that after the RP Connect instance happening, they know now. Honestly, I think it could go either way, and I'm willing to let that be folks' interpretation. In the profile, it just says do it. Separate them if they're courting and they shouldn't be. But if you have decided that your Latin just wouldn't know from their experiences that they shouldn't be, then you can wait until you realize it. That would be okay. Alrighty. A broody Latenivenatrix will court all eligible and receptive Latenivenatrix available to them until they make their final choice of partner, meaning that same-sex pairs can and frequently do occur. Kami, there you go. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the fact that they don't have any observable dimorphism. There will be same-sex pairs. It'll just happen. They're going to narrow things down more so based on personality and health and the looks of the Latin until they pick the one that they like most. And then they're going to try to pair, and then we'll just see what happens. So essentially what that means as well is that I'm going to be looking, like I said earlier, for those who are displaying receptive behaviors, that are marking their sense in places, etc. And then I'm going to court any Latin that I think is broody and receptive. So if I see that there's 5 of them displaying that behavior. Soup, are you displaying that behavior? Then I'm probably going to proposition all of them in the way that we shall describe shortly, and then narrow it down as I go. Latin says the want for eggies. So more so by Latin. Pan-Latin, Kami! Pan-Latin. Yeah. Unless you do the hormone imbalance thing. It's basically that they really don't know who's gonna give them eggs and who's not. Who's gonna give them kiddos and who's not. And within a court, for reasons we'll get to in a second, that desire to have kiddos is often supplied by all of the kiddos being raised communally. So even if they don't have their own kiddos, they feel okay about it. Same-sex pairs formed inside of court are more likely to last than those formed elsewhere, as their need for companions and whelps to care for is met by the court. So, the whelps that already exist in the court that they're getting to communally take care of are going to allow them to stay together as a pair. Sometimes... Oh, somebody had a question about this earlier. A Latenivenatrix who is not receptive to courting will push away a broody Latenivenatrix attempting to court them, even hissing them away if the broody Latenivenatrix does not give up. So, you know, occasionally somebody may make a mistake. You know, say, for the sake of argument, I have lice. I don't know. I'm itchy. And I'm rubbing on all these trees, because gosh darn it, I've got dandruff. I'm so itchy. But I look heckin' receptive right now. Somebody else is like, ooh la la, that dandruffy bird over there looking real good. And I'm just aggravated because I got fleas. If somebody tried to approach me and I was not receptive to them, and they kept following around and pushing me, then you can absolutely hiss at them. Or go as far to challenge them for personal space if they won't leave you alone. That feels like something that should be, you know, kind of intuitive, but I mention it anyway because I think it's very important that we should know what we're allowed to do if we don't want something and somebody's pushing it on us anyway. They're like, no, leave me alone, is perfectly fine. You've got lice now. We've all got lice. One of us has lice, we all have lice. Continuing to harass an unreceptive Latenivenatrix is grounds to be corrected by the oligarchy, or in extreme cases, shunned and or exiled. So given these birds are so social, and it's the oligarchy's job to keep everything copacetic and running smoothly, if a Latin has just attached themselves to another Latin and will not give up, that's the oligarchy's job now to step in. If things are bad enough, they can absolutely run that Latin out. And that's in there, again, for, like, those maladaptive Latins. This really shouldn't be happening very often, but if somebody's Latin is, you know, I don't know, got a social disorder or a hormone disorder or something, and they're entirely too clingy and pushy, then that would be how you would react to that as the oligarchy. Alright, let's find out how courtship actually works. Enough of this talking about who to date and who not to date. Let's do some dating. Whoa! Okay. You with the flower bed, I'm stealing your flowers. Haha! If I want to court somebody... No, you can't have it back. Don't squawk at me. Where's my wife? I can't very well court somebody that isn't my wife. Ooh. There you are. If I want to court somebody, I've already looked at this person and I've decided they are receptive. I'm going to try to get their attention first, probably, so I'm going to give them a little dance. This dance can be however you like. Get creative with it. This is one of my favorite things about the courtship process. I've got some Latins who do a little swoosh. I've got some Latins who want to do a little waltz. I've got some Latins who back it up, back it up, back it up. Whatever you want to do. Once you've got their attention, give them a little gift. Yeesh. Yeesh, yeesh, yeesh. And if they like it and they're receptive to you, they're going to hold it high in the air like that. Yay! Success! If they're not receptive to you, they're not going to do that. So they might reject the gift. They might just walk away from you. I could, like, back away and be like, what are you doing, bro? I don't want all that. Goodbye. I might take the... Imagine. I might... Oh, so sad. I might take the gift and then run away with it. Never to return. As long as I don't hold it in the air, then I have not accepted you. This might create some confusion against Latins. Like, if I take your gift and then I run off with it, but I don't hold it in the air, like, you're not entirely sure, maybe, if that was an acceptance or not. And that's where it can kind of happen that somebody's maybe following someone around and not getting the message. So if you want to be really clear about it, there you go, Coops. Whee! Ah, young love. Jade, you got it. Yeah, if you want to try it out, absolutely go ahead. The gift can be anything. I picked a flower, but it does not have to be something, you know, I don't know, human, objectively nice. I get a piece of rotten carrion meat over here. Mm-hmm. So sexy. I'm gonna dance with this rotten piece of meat. Oh, yeah. Woo! Yay! Rotten piece of meat does it! Uh-oh, my wife's mad. If you don't like the gift, you can turn it down. If you don't like the Latin, you can turn it down. It really doesn't matter. If you don't want it, don't take it. Yeah, that's what happens when you do it right in front of them. You get caught. Now, if you're courting with somebody, you're going to spend a lot of time with them. You're going to be testing their temperament, seeing if they like the same games you like, if you guys hunt well together, etc. But keep in mind, especially in early days, you're going to be courting like this with anybody who looks to be receptive. You can narrow it down pretty quickly, because you don't want to be courting like 10 different Latins for several sessions. That's too hard. But, you know, don't spend all of your time on one, because you gotta go figure out who else is receptive and might be willing to take your gifts. What if the one who received the gift, they pick it up, but don't raise their heads, but will dance? Ooh, that's a good question. Alright, can we get quiet on the set real quick? Thanks, guys. Sorry to interrupt your courtships. We had a good question. So what happens if somebody picks up the gift and they start dancing with it and they look real happy, but they're not holding it in the air? Like, maybe I'm just like, ooh, yay, pretty flower, but I'm not holding it in the air for you. That's not acceptance. And the reason that's specified in the profile so much is so we don't, you know, we have a way to tell between these happy-go-lucky birds that are constantly playing with each other and when they're actually getting serious. So, if your partner that you've tried to give a gift to is not holding it in the air, they may just be playing. They may just be happy. And that could happen because they're not broody yet for any reason. It could happen because you've mistaken a sub-adult for a full adult, and they're not even old enough to be broody yet. It could happen for any number of reasons. But if they're not holding it in the air like that, then they're not accepting, technically. Alrighty. Moving right along. We gotta move. While courting, a broody Latenivenatrix spends large amounts of time with whoever they're courting. To demonstrate readiness to pair after courtship, a Latenivenatrix builds a nest, collects their intended, and performs a combination of calls and dances around the nest. If their courtship partner agrees to pair with them, they will mimic these movements, and the two will attempt to nest. The attempt to nest being in there because, again, same-sex pairs happen quite frequently. So, assuming that I was successful, I'm going to pretend that this corpse over here, one of these corpses, is my nest, because I don't have one yet. I'm going to collect my intended, try to entice them to come with me. Woo! We might do instant nest in a second when we actually try some nesting. Whoop! I'm going to collect them and bring them over to my nest. I've nested inside of a corpse, my darling. Am I not a catch? I'm gonna do a little dance. Make a little love. Get down tonight. Hey! And if they're mimicking me, that's good. If I'm doing a little dance and they're not mimicking me, yeah, that is probably why I have less. Then I have a problem. This is not my weef. Because we are not yet agreed to pair. If that happens, I'm gonna destroy my nest. I'm sad. I am upset. And of course, I can't propose to the next person with the same nest that I made for this one. That's just silly. So I'd be very sad and I would destroy my nest. And I would start all over, choosing somebody else. Alrighty. Any questions about proposals? Sweet. Okay, we're gonna get into parental behavior at the end. So we're actually gonna skip just a little bit and work through the other sections before we come back to parental behavior. Because what I'd kind of like to do is at the end of the tutorial, those who would like to explore and play out the parental section instead of just discussing it, you guys can stay on and nest, and I'll stay with you, and we'll go through it together, rather than holding everybody hostage for the parental section. So we're going to skip past parental behavior for now and go straight to court interspecies interactions. We got some folks practicing nesting proposals. It's looking cute, guys. Alrighty, moving on. Curious by nature, but equally as untrusting, Latenivenatrix who have encountered a species that is new to them will spend long periods of time observing them and pestering them with various annoyances, such as dropping things on them and calling loudly and hiding. This is all to see how the creature reacts. So, if I see another species, and I've never seen them before, my main goal is to figure out if they're dangerous to me. An example of... Oh! There's a something over there. Bros, let's go see what it is. Well, go! Field trip! Pick, now. We're probably gonna try a few things. We're gonna pester this thing. Pest the living daylights out of it. We can hide and call at them. We can throw something at them. So their reaction was just to run into the water. They don't seem unfriendly, but they don't seem friendly either. So I'm going to file that information away. And now, you know, until proven otherwise, I believe that this is the way that all of these creatures behave. So I'm not going to consider them a threat, probably, because I didn't get attacked. I don't know that I would consider these guys a really viable friend, because they spend a lot of time in the water, it looks like, and I can't do that. But you never know. Maybe over time. It sneezed on you! Oh no! Oh no! It's gonna get you! It's gonna get you! Hee 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 hee. Ooh. Spooky! Okay. So at that point, I think we've probably gotten some information back now. They don't like us. Ooh! Nope, they don't like us. That being the case, we'll probably evacuate the premises. Unless we need water or something, which is fine. But I think it just challenged us, maybe. I didn't see a mock hit, but who knows. Either way, it's unhappy. So we file that information away, and now we think, okay, this is how this species of animal behaves. The next time we would see them, we wouldn't necessarily need to do all of that pestering. Because we know if we pester it, it's gonna kind of run at us and yell at us and stuff like that. So next time I'm not gonna do all that. I'm just gonna know that that's how it's gonna act and keep my distance. Sometimes, obviously, this can mean that you get wrong information. In the many adventures of Fork, I'm not entirely sure how he has survived Alios. Because he keeps getting the wrong information about them. That can happen. Within a court, that might mean that you have unrelateds that do not have your same opinions about different species. Because they might have had different experiences than you. Good lord. Who just... Fox! Fox! Why would you do this to yourself? Well, you see, that, my children, is what you don't want your potential boyfriends to do. But I think they were on as a grandchild, so I guess we'll forgive them. Oh my god. That's what happened. Oh. Oh no. Help. I'm okay, guys. Who've survived? Pandora. Okay, where are you, Coops? Oh! Y'all put that out. Oh, she's on the cliff. Coops, get off the rock! My wife! Ay, ay, ay. Oh my gosh. Sorry guys. I met your mother when we were but solitary Latins, so I didn't have a whole lot of choices for my fitness tests, and, well, can't get rid of her now. Well, I could, but then I'd lose all of you guys. No, don't do it, Kami. Resist. Resist the voices. Okay, I think I've covered this, but just in case. Next bullet point. Latenivenatrix will remember how a species reacts and let that color future interactions. They are also smart enough to recognize individuals of a species, and as such they are able to form symbiotic relationships and even friendships with individuals of other species, but will not extend that goodwill to individuals who have not earned it. So the biggest thing I think we have to keep in mind here is what does a symbiotic relationship look like for a Latin? Per rules, we can't mix pack, right? So we can't be across species, etc. And obviously I can't defend another species, and I'm not going to be able to feed you or hunt for you as another species. These are things I can't do. I could groom you. I could play with you. I think it would be reasonable to even see, oh, you're collecting a bunch of reeds. Here, let me get one for you. You know, give them a little present. It seems like they like those. Never mind that they're building a nest with it. But what we can't do, of course, is defend them, or hunt for them, or anything like that, because that falls under mixed packing rules, unfortunately. And of course it depends a little bit on the other species, right? So that individual, not only that species, but that individual has to be friendly toward you, or at least passive toward you for this to work. So somebody actually asked a question earlier today about a Giga Sow and whether or not you could form a symbiotic relationship with them. You absolutely can, but it's kind of, the ball is kind of in the Giga's court. So if she is just ignoring you, and just existing and not aggressing you or spooking you, then yeah, absolutely, you can form a little relationship with a Giga. If the first time you meet her, she has cubs and she's a raging ball of just nonsense, then I'm probably not going to form a relationship with that Giga. So it's kind of on them and your temperament testing of them, right? When you pester them to see how they react, and however they react is how you're going to just assume their boundaries are. Your Latin wouldn't be pushing for a symbiotic relationship with an individual that didn't want it. There is a section in here for dimes for Dimetrodon. We're not going to cover that today just because that playable hasn't been released yet. But in future, that'll be fun. Latenivenatrix are playful and easily bored. They play often with both objects and others, and sometimes hunt tiny critters for sport, drawing out the exchange for fun as long as possible and terrorizing the critter before killing it. Should the quarry somehow escape, they become overexcited, singing, jumping for joy, as that is the most fun and enriching outcome. So these guys, consider them little ADHD birds. They gotta have that frequent time to play and that, enrichment in their enclosure. So what we've been today doing for sitting for long periods of time so that I can yap is not their normal way of behavior. They will turn to critters to help with that enrichment. So if I find that I have a lot of time to myself, or I want something to do with someone I'm courting, or I'm playing with my nieces and my nephews, pretty much any reason to play. If I can find a critter and I'm not so hungry that I immediately want to hunt it, I'm probably going to play with it. I'm going to herd it around, I'm going to jump over it, gonna nip right behind it and see if I can make it go faster. Maybe give it a little nip on the back end, see if it'll squeak. Squeaky toy. If it gets away from me, I'm even happier because, wow, I didn't expect that. I usually catch critters and it got away. Does that really amount to much as far as, the intricacies of court behavior? No, but it's fun. I do a lot of that, I must confess, while I am on solitary Latin and I'm hanging out with other species. One of my favorite games is to try to run the critter toward the other species and see what they do. It's a lot of fun to me. Yeah, it's fun. Sleeping Latins everywhere. Cuddle pile! Okay. Court aggression. Other species and other Latenivenatrix are free to come and go through a court's territory as they please unless they're caught stealing. So we talked about this earlier. If it seems like challenging this intruder who is stealing from you seems too risky, you'll just try to pester them into leaving. But it may not work. So, that happens, it happens, guys. We can't have everything we want in the world, unfortunately. Court Latenivenatrix may have disagreements over courting, nesting spots, favorite items, or personal space. We've been talking about this kind of the whole time, but we're gonna do some display and practice of it here in a second because this one's kind of important. I get a lot of questions about it. These disputes are quick to settle down once one of the oligarchy intervenes. If no member of the oligarchy intervenes, because they're not there or for any other reason, the disagreement may come to blows, but Latenivenatrix will separate and calm down after the sting of 1 or 2 bites gets their point across. And this goes hand in hand with the special notes section, which specifies that we do not pounce small creatures in a challenge. So, somebody's up in my business, or they're taking all the nesting materials and I need some, or they're all up in my girl's business while I'm trying to court with her. These are all reasons that I could challenge somebody. We could get into a little spat. We yell at each other, and if nobody backs down, it might even come to a challenge. And if that happens, it might even come to blows. But only if the oligarchy doesn't intervene, usually. If the oligarchy intervenes, I'm pretty much gonna step back and let them handle it. Doesn't mean that I just immediately forgive that other Latin and I'm fine with them. But for now, I've been put in my place and I need to stop. There was a question in Sage. Let's go see. Let's go see. What about a court that's in the territory of a giga? What if they follow it in hope of taking down a large enough prey animal to people court? Would this be considered hunting for the Latens? Yeah, if we're following a giga to see if they kill something and then we want to challenge them off of the meal, we could do that. That would be kind of a symbiotic relationship. I can't imagine that the giga would appreciate that much. So what we would probably find is, no, we can't actually successfully do that. But we could try. I believe their profile says they're largely just supposed to ignore smalls unless we're being aggressive with them. So they would probably just ignore us until we were actually challenging them for something. Following them and not challenging them in the hope of leftovers. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. If they kill something and then they try to eat it and there's still some left over and I want to take it, as long as they're not mad about it. You know, if they try to challenge me or something, I don't know that I'm going to pursue that challenge, to be honest. But if they're okay with it, then that goes peacefully. Dino, why are you calling my name? What you want? What you need? Horse? What? Did I miss somebody? I just answered I answered Easy's question, but I don't see another one. Oh, bye, turtle! Okay. And back to what we were doing. We were talking about bickering and stuff. Court Latenivenatrix do not support or fight for other Latenivenatrix in their court who are having a disagreement, even if a challenge is issued. However, they may seek to placate an aggravated party they are closely bonded to, hoping to save them from being scolded by the oligarchy. So, the way this essentially breaks down, let's say, Symphony, do you mind stepping over here with me? Are you still with us? Yeah. We're gonna bicker. It's gonna be great. I don't know what we're bickering over, but oh, this butterfly, it's mine, you can't have it. So, essentially the way this is gonna go, we're probably gonna start by yelling at each other, doing some flappies. What? Why'd you take my butterfly? How dare you? Rah! Can't do this. I got custody of this butterfly. As soon as the yelling starts happening, oligarchy, which is supposed to be me, but I'm doing this nonsense, should be hearing and possibly interfering. And then others can, you know, try to soothe me. They could give me some nuzzles or some two-calls to help me to calm down. But what they can't do is post up with me. Because they don't want to get in trouble with the oligarchy. Just because I'm getting in trouble. Yay! Sufficiently done. If someone is joining in, what I would do personally first in game is to back away. So, Dino, do you mind? You're gonna kind of post up and start getting in our argument. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna back away from the person whose business this ain't. I don't care about them. I'm not in a fight with them. Odds are good the oligarchy is gonna settle this before it becomes a problem. But if this continues to become a problem and Dino is still intervening, I'm probably just gonna step away and honestly ask for clarification in chat. Because that shouldn't be happening. What we don't want is for these guys to dogpile each other. Because that's no fun. having a spat over nesting materials shouldn't result in an all-out war against one person, you know? Well, let's say for the sake of argument, okay, back at it. Let's say we're arguing and the oligarchy doesn't show up. We're just going at it, and no one's showing up. We're getting madder. How dare you continue yelling at me? Keep in mind, we're hissing at each other, but so far no challenges have happened. Right? But if I do a little bit of this, now we've got a challenge. One or two bites should be enough to get the point across. Now, here Symphony was willing to kind of back off. That may not always happen. You know? Sometimes we're really invested. If that doesn't happen, though, one or two bites, we're still going to back away. And we might find that we have this disagreement again later. We might find that it's not settled. But next time, the oligarchy might be around to see it happening. And that would be better than me continuing to just fight nonstop. I don't know why things aren't letting me eat. Oh, there we go. Okay. Any questions about any of that? Because I know we've had lots of questions about that before, about how far it can go, etc. Grudges. Ah, yes. It's not specified in profile that you can hold a grudge, but I'm going to say you can. And the reason I'm going to say you can do that is because it's already a bad situation if somebody is continually proving unmanageable. We talked earlier about how if a Laten is proving unmanageable, they're constantly getting in the fights. They're constantly causing problems. Then the oligarchy at that point is just going to exile them. If it was a case where you couldn't actually hold a grudge, I don't know why anybody would exile a Laten who kept getting into disagreements, because, you know, you'd just be like, oh, that's fine. Take care, Star. Amongst non-oligarchy lessons. Yeah, I mean, yes. Yes, you can hold a grudge. I would say probably wouldn't leap to that too quickly, because these guys are pretty playful, and things usually settle down pretty quickly. But if something's happening over and over, feel free to hold a grudge. These guys are smart. You know, they frequently meet other species, form relationships with them, remember individuals. If they can do that, I feel confident that they can also remember that somebody keeps getting in their business when they don't want them to. I'm not sure what we're squawking at. What are we squawking at? Something? Oh, are we just practicing? Or is there... Oh. Giga Giga? Did it eat our food? Oh. Okay, so, question is, did this Giga eat our food? Yes or no? I didn't either. But I'm hearing some 3 calls. Even if we're not challenging, even if there's no mock hitting going on, 3 calls are aggressive, right? So, if we didn't see them stealing any resources, we're not going to aggress them. We could bark at them. You could hide somewhere and bark and see if they startle. You could drop something on their head. Ability calls are a bit of a gray area, honestly. They might be considered a little aggressive just because they usually say, hey, I'm about to do something, but they are not an attack. So, oh. They're a little done with us. Ah. Did we actually see them eating this time? Still no? Well, if they're not eating, we shouldn't be hissing at them. Most likely. But they also seem pretty calm. So what we would learn at this point is that they're probably fine. Congrats to the Giga who has survived the horde of Latens harassing them. They maybe wish they hadn't survived. Only thing I will say is, you know, don't drag the harassing on for too long, because I think at that point anything is going to react poorly to you. You know? So, you know, once you've done an initial spook, you've kind of done the runaround, then that's probably fine. Because I think, you know, anybody at that point would try to challenge you for personal space or something. But yeah. I like to think of us like horseflies or something. Just buzzing all around. Oh no, you walked through the cloud of bugs. Sorry about it. Alright. Moving right along. We're just gonna sit here and keep going. Courts are not aggressive towards one another. Swarm, oh please. Oh! Oh no! Never mind! Nice. Good to know. Thank you. Yep. I was turning around anyway. At that point, it looks like they fully intend to go. Granted, the full extent of our territory might be a little bit larger than this. So, if we hadn't accidentally forfeited, we could have maybe gone a little farther. But they seem to be going with no fuss. Had they accepted the challenge, we probably would have, I don't know what we would have done. It would have been on, and we would have seen how it hashed out, but, So one thing I did notice is somebody else issued the challenge, technically. Somebody else started biting. That is okay. That is okay. We're going to get into it in a second about what things are the things that are only for an oligarchy. But if anybody sees somebody is stealing our food, you can challenge them with whatever group you happen to be with. You don't need the oligarchy there for you. But anyways, as I was saying, courts are not aggressive towards one another. At most, they may seek to drive another court out of an area if they're draining their resources, or they wish to overtake another court's main territory. But usually it's just going to be an assembly situation. Should two courts find themselves at odds, the court will follow the oligarchy's guidance. So this is one of those cases where what the oligarchy says go, you can't start this challenge. And you can't accept this challenge if the other court issues it first, unless the oligarchy is there to do it. If an oligarchy challenges, the rest of the court will join. If the oligarchy forfeits, so does the court. So in a court versus court challenge, it's really important for the oligarchy members who are there to be up front and center where everybody can see what they're doing. If you're hiding behind everybody else, everybody's going to struggle to know what they're supposed to be following. Challenges against two courts are all-out brawls, with members taking a mob mentality and targeting any member that they see the oligarchy is targeting. So, in a court versus court challenge, one of the oligarchy is going to move first. They're going to accept or issue the challenge first, and they're going to move first. Then everybody else in the court is going to start trying to target the same one that they're targeting. Because these are brawls and not hunts, Latenivenatrix prefer to retain their mobility and leave space for the rest of the court to mob. In a court versus court challenge, Latenivenatrix do not pounce enemies. So we shouldn't be pouncing enemies anyway, because they're small creatures, and we don't pounce small creatures in a challenge. But, just to really drive that point home, we're not pouncing, we're leaving room. So if I'm heading in, I'm just gonna go at this guy, and I'm gonna pretend I'm attacking him. Whee! If I'm going in at this guy, everybody goes in at this guy. And it's gonna be a real bad time for all of us if we stay pounced, because we're gonna get bitten. And we don't want that. So, we move in and out, we don't pounce. Make space for others. That way we can all get in there. Now, if you have all members of your oligarchy there, they may be targeting different folks. So it could occur that, like, I start targeting old Lord Soup over there, and Ari starts targeting Coops. And now we've got maybe two different groups of folks who are targeting people. That's okay. We don't all have to target the same person. But you're following a member of the oligarchy, so you're waiting to see that at least one of them has picked a target. This is going to be real sad for whoever's being targeted. But it does mean that things tend to end faster when these challenges happen. So, pros and cons. Alright. Threat reaction. If somebody attacks us or is hunting us, Court Latenivenatrix, who are strongly bonded to hunted individuals, will go all out in their defense. So I would go all out in defense of Spoon here. I don't know about the rest of you guys. I'm just kidding. I have Offspring in here, so I'd probably be pretty closely bonded with them, unless they were just, you know, real lazy jerk faces or something. That I, for some reason, have not yet exiled. But those who are not as heavily bonded may not find that they have many defenders. So let's say that you're a maladaptive Latin in some form or fashion. You have some sort of social trauma, tyranny, or you have a disorder, or something, and you don't have a lot of bonds in the court. That's going to present a problem if you get hunted. Because there may not be many folks who come to your defense. So that kind of feeds into, in general, the way that the profile is built around trusted relationships built over time. You want those relationships. You want to be engaging in play. You want to be socializing. If you're not doing those things, and you don't have a lot of bonds with anybody, then it doesn't matter who you are, offspring, grandchild, unrelated, you might find that you don't have a lot of defenders in your corner if you get hunted. If challenged by anybody, so this is kind of what I was talking about earlier with the Giga situation, if we had been challenged first, it would have been the oligarchy's decision to accept or forfeit. If the oligarchy wasn't present at all, the court would have to forfeit and return later with the oligarchy to do anything about it if they needed to. That doesn't mean that you can't issue a challenge yourself. So if you see somebody who's stealing our resources, you can challenge them without the oligarchy present. If they challenge us first, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna go get the boss. And you can come back with us later. It does present, you know, a unique situation if your oligarchy isn't on at all during a session. Because that means you can't accept challenges. And if there's a court versus court situation, you're going to be real stuck. But think of it as, you know, just without the bosses around, I don't have the confidence to know what I'm supposed to do. So in that situation, if you're in a session with no oligarchy, you would pretty much just forfeit things when they happen, because you're not sure what to do about it. Okay. I'll show you. Oh. We got, I think, like 1.5 more sections, and then we can do some parenting if we want to do it or not, if we need to go places. Oh, what we got in there? Something. People ran off on their own. How dare they? Having a good time without us. Whee! What are we hopping about, guys? I'm gonna join in because I'm a friendly bird, but I don't know what we're hopping about. Alright. I'm gonna keep going. Y'all feel free to hop around if you need to. Get your energy out. Okay. Feeding habits. Latenivenatrix will eat most anything that they can eat. Oh, I see, Dino. What happens if you challenge without a boss? Okay, we can do that real quick. Let's divide into 2 groups. One group over here, and one group over there by the rock. Right, Dino. You are the opposing court's oligarchy member. So they're gonna... Oh, you gotta get to the other side. You rule them. So everybody over there by the rock, you're following Dino's lead. On our side, guys, we have no oligarchy members. So we're confused. We're not sure what to do. Help. Woo! We did it. So it's pretty simple. It does mean that we probably have to walk away from maybe even our territory for a little while. But you know, that's just lore for the court. We can always come back and retake it later if we have our oligarchy on. Woo! What? We still yelling. Alrighty. Did that answer any questions, Dino? Yay! Okay, so for feeding habits, Latins will kind of eat anything. The environment will impact what they eat. So you can kind of act out eating shellfish if you've got them. You can act out eating some berries if you've got them. Obviously, you can't actually eat them, but you can act it out. Changing environments often results in a period of time when a Latin goes more hungry because they don't know what's in the area to eat yet. Yeah. Dino can lead the HP. Go ahead and let them know how many. There can be as many as 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One more. Oh. Was that 8? Oh, because Dino's in it. Yep. Alright. You guys are ready to go. I'm just gonna talk and watch. Oh. Way this works. Preferred method is to disorient and tire. So this should be kind of a drawn-out hunt. You want to take your time. Draw them out. See if you could wear them down. Or make them run into each other. That was funny. These guys seem pretty well coordinated, but they're running after you, so you can keep enticing them to run. Do we? Well, we just lost one, so... Now we don't. Oh. Oh, that was supposed to happen. Aww. We accidentally wore out ourselves instead of wearing them out. It happens. It happens. Yeah. Alright, let me see if I can pull them back, though. We can resume. Wait. Was that Starling or Starling? I forget which one's which. Starling. Okay. Yay! Alright, let's get them. Coops, could you teleport them back? Hi, Star! Oh, okay, thanks. Woo! You're alive! Obviously, we don't want you to miss out on the rest of the tutorial if you want, so we brought you back. Alright! What a lovely failed hunt, my guys. Well done. Yeah, cryptops are hard, man. Yeah, maybe! Yes! They managed to hunt together, so maybe. Oh, is that what happened? We were seeing you walk, so we weren't sure if you'd run out of stam or something. Mm-hmm. They do. They're my worst fear these days. Alrighty. But as far as profile, that went pretty well. It's kind of hard to draw them out for long periods of time. Not gonna lie, because they're fast and have decent stam. Yes, that's true. I didn't notice that count, but I believe you. So if we had 9 in there, we were actually over our hunting party limit. We should only have 8. Yeah, that's probably what happened. Kami didn't see chat. So in future, Kami, you just want to be keeping an eye on chat, especially if an engagement starts to happen. I know a lot of people play with their HUD off, which is perfectly fine. But if you see that an engagement is starting to pop off, you might want to open up chat and see if there's a hunting party that has been established, or what's going on, because there are limits for that. Woo! But we lost on our end, so we got away with it by accident. Okay. Very important point, as far as, because I've seen this brought up with like trusted versus untrusted. Under feeding habits, the entire court will eat together with no regard for hierarchy. But Latenivenatrix may gift food to those they are closely bonded to, those who are sickly, or to the oligarchy to ensure that they stay fit and healthy. So, you know, just because we have our besties in the court that we would defend with our lives, and then we have those that we have grudges against, etc., we don't hog food, and we don't eat in a specific order or anything like that. That would be, gosh, I forget the actual rule number, but in our Discord server rules for private servers, there's a rule that states that we can't have any roles or hierarchies or anything like that that does not realistically fall within the profile in our private servers. So unfortunately, if we had... Yes, thank you. If we had a private server where they were establishing hierarchies that ate in a certain order, or they were establishing hierarchies where certain folks aren't allowed anywhere near this, cave that we've put all of our nests in, or things like that. That's not a hierarchy that's supported by the profile. So that would be technically in violation of Community Rule 7. And Leslie. Courts never hunt Titan class prey. Not ever. Nope. Too big. And will only hunt large prey at night, and if the large prey has no adult defenders of the same size class. So, what we mean by that is I could hunt, I believe I could hunt a para if I wanted to, because it's a large size class, but it has to be at night. And if the para has a defender in its same size class, so if it has another para defending it, then I can't hunt it. What I can do, if I'm really desperate and I want to go for it anyway, I can try to cut one of those paras off from its defender. And then I can try to just hunt that one. But you gotta be real careful to cut it off good and clean and get it far away. Uh-oh. So this is an albino Iggy. If we wanted a hunting party, we could hunt this. Uh-huh. Albinos are huntable at any time of day or night by any hunter. Sure. I thought I heard one somewhere, but I haven't seen it yet. Oh, there it is. Yes, traumatize the Danon. Kill its icky parent. Hi, Kami. Yeah, we've gone a little overtime, so it makes sense. Ooh. It could be one more. I'm staying out of it because I want to be able to see what's going on. 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. It could be one more. At this point, since there's not another joining, you would probably just go for it. Oh, sorry, Kami. Oh yeah, that little Danon. I wonder if it imprinted on that Iggy. Oh, poor thing. My thing. I got some gift food. Is it eating? If it's not eating, we don't care. Oh no, it's too calling the dead Iggy. I'm gonna cry. No. We don't mistake other species. Yeah, that's so sad. Help. No, they would smell different and sound different. So we probably wouldn't be too easily fooled. Under normal circumstances, we might would pester the thing, but right now we're kind of busy eating. Yeah, Coops gets it. We're smart little guys. Bye, Lord of the Soup. Alrighty. Let's get this finished out. Really, the only thing that's left besides if people want to try to nest and do parenting behavior, which, again, is totally up to you guys. I'm trying to round this out so that we can get all the information except parenting and get that last for those people who do want to stay for it. Oh my gosh. What am I supposed to do? Help. I'm a monster. Alright, so only last thing to go over instead of, or outside of parenting is succession. And we've had a lot of questions about how this works, so if you have questions about it, feel free to ask. In the event that one of the ruling pair dies, so it specifies dying. If the ruling pair is not fit for other reasons, we'll get about that. But if one of the ruling pair dies, succession passes to the enforcer and their partner. But this can get a little confusing, because what if the enforcer doesn't have a partner, or the enforcer's partner is the same sex or something? If the enforcer is unpaired and unrelated, then the surviving of the member of the previous ruling pair probably just pairs with them, because they trust each other deeply. I mean, that shouldn't be happening. That an enforcer is a UR and pairs with the UR. If it does, it's illegal. And that would be cause to not trust my enforcer and probably kick them out of the position. But yeah, if the enforcer is unpaired, it is not related to the surviving member of the previous ruling pair, they're probably going to pair together. Because picking an enforcer means choosing somebody who is, like, deeply trusted by you and probably shares your same, wants for how to run a court. If that pairing works out and it happens to be an opposite sex pairing that reduce children, etc., then they can just keep running the court. Choose an enforcer of their own. They're the ruling pair now. But, a lot of happenstances would have to happen for that to work out. So, in the other cases, what do? There are many ways in which this line of succession may not go smoothly. The enforcer may be related to the surviving member of the ruling pair, but may not have a partner yet. In this case, the court descends into brief chaos as mating pairs bicker over which one of them will inherit. The enforcer may have a partner, but their partner is of the same sex and cannot form a court. In this case, the court actually may be briefly ruled as normal by this ruling pair. So you could, for a brief time, I would say no more than a few sessions, like 2 or 3 maybe. You could have a brief time of a court being run by a same-sex pair. But sooner or later, they're going to try to nest and it's not going to work. They won't have noticed this until now because they've, been raising their children communally with everybody else. So they didn't know that they weren't having any successful children. But now the ruling pair parents their kids on their own. So they're going to realize real quick they can't have kids. That becomes a problem. And the court will descend into brief chaos again as they bicker over new leadership. Ruling pairs have the instinct to choose an enforcer who is most trustworthy, but they lack any instinct or ability to choose an enforcer with the correct kind of partner to inherit, since they lack dimorphism. So, since Latens lack dimorphism, and they're still animals, so they can only think ahead so much, they're not going to be able to go out of their way to choose an enforcer that's going to be, like, the right kind, with the right kind of partner, to inherit the court and have absolutely no problems later. You're going to choose based entirely on how much you trust them to do the job. And then if things fall into chaos later, they simply do. which is the circle of life. When a new ruling pair inherits a court, this creates a time of confusion for all the former grandchildren, as none of them truly knows who their parents are due to how they were raised. So the grandchildren are all raised together, communally, and they don't know who their parents are usually. That can be a little confusing when a new ruling pair takes over, because their kids don't know that they're offspring of the ruling pair now. The new ruling pair know who their children are and begin allowing them to court. But this may not be enough for their children to realize that they can court now. And if that's the case, they may just still disperse. They may still decide to leave because they don't realize they can actually court and they want to go find their prospects somewhere. Metcash is staying on. It's too cute. Being played with by the folks that killed his mommy. So sad. Alright. Could that lead into accidental in-system family courting? I am not sure I understand the question, Starling. In-family courting. Like, if one member of the ruling pair dies and then the enforcer courts with the surviving member? Is that what you mean? Oh, no, it shouldn't. The surviving member of the ruling pair knows who's related to them. And they're not going to try to court their enforcer if they're related to them. Like, if that's my kid, I'm not going to court them. That only happens in... That's what I was saying, like, a lot of happenstances would have to happen for that to work out. Because it would have to be an enforcer who's unrelated to me. An enforcer with no pair. For it to work. And more often than not, your enforcer's probably going to be one of your kids, just because you can train them up the way you want them to be. So short answer, no. It shouldn't lead to any in-family courtships. Well. Any other questions about succession? Are we good? Alrighty. I'm gonna take that as a no. Okay. So, I'm gonna say that pretty much concludes the main part of this tutorial. If you don't want to stick around to nest and stuff like that, I'm going to stick on just a little bit longer in case those folks who want to practice nesting want to ask questions or anything like that. But beyond that, the tutorial is concluded. Whee! Most of us survived. What are you doing about, little critter? Bye, Casey! Alright, is anybody planning on staying on to nest? Or are we all in? Oh. Yeah, I can. I can read out the parenting. I was beginning to feel a little bad because I said that the tutorial would probably last around 3 hours, and now it's going on 4. So if you guys want to, I'll absolutely do it. But if we need to go places, I understand that too. So, do we want to do? We can do parental, and then if folks want to leave, they can leave. How about that? How's that work? Take ownership of your own time. If you need to go, you can go. You have, Ari. You are clearly the most colorful. Okay. I shall do that, Coops. Just do the reading of the will. Oh. Court parental behavior. Latenivenatrix are dutiful parents, but since whelps are helpless when they first hatch, parenting can be a stressful time. Yeah, the Danon's super cute, but maybe just chat calls. That would be quieter. If there's not enough help for the parents, or there are not enough resources to go around, Latenivenatrix parents prioritize each other and may lose hatchlings. So this can be very sad, I know, but very important. Kids are for now. Your spouse is forever. Unless something seriously goes awry, Latins are gonna bond for life. And that means, more than anything else, you don't want to lose your mate. You gotta take good care of them. So if there's not enough resources to go around, you're probably going to prioritize your mate. And you might lose a whelp or two. You know, in a very unfortunate situation, you might need to eat for yourself. You might need your spouse to get their food. And some of your kiddos go hungry. It's unfortunate, but such is the way of the wilds. And you can always have more. Yeah, I don't think Dino is pursuing it. I think they're playing with it, which is okay, but we wouldn't want to pursue it that far if it's trying to get away from us and we're hunting it or challenging it or something. Okay, ruling pair raise their children personally, staying right beside them well into their adolescent stage. Okay, thanks, Ari. During this time, the enforcer manages the murder, and the court hunts for the new offspring of the ruling pair. So, if Spoon here and I were to have some kids, we would prioritize them, and ourselves, of course, for the time that they were young. We would spend all of our time with them. We would teach them everything that we could. We would defend them. What we wouldn't do is go off and try to find them food, because that's not our job. That's the court's job. The enforcer is going to run the court in our absence, so they're going to make all of the decisions. But anybody in the court can lead hunting parties, and everybody in the court is expected to participate in providing for the kiddos. Such are the privileges of being the ruling pair, I suppose. The grandchildren are a different story. Court's grandchildren are not raised by only their parents, but by the entire court. Unlike the ruling pair, the parents of grandchildren will share parenting duties with the other trusted members of the court, coming and going instead of staying with their new whelps. That does mean that if somebody is, like, untrusted by you, you can try to keep them away from helping to parent. But I would keep that to, like, if you have a reason to not trust that Latin. If they're brand new, or if they have done something to you repeatedly that you formed a grudge over. Because at the end of the day, it's the job of the court to raise kids that way. And so anybody who's actually trying to participate by bringing food and raising the kids and playing with them and teaching them is actually doing their job. We wouldn't want to just force them away from doing their job for no reason. If more than one nest of grandchildren hatches at once, all grandchildren are raised together as a group. And this is why grandchildren often don't know who their true parents are. But they do bond closely to whomever helped to care for them. parents do know who their children are, so, you know, if you happen to become a ruling pair, you know who your kids are, you can allow them to court now. But they don't know that you're their parents. I could see some situations in which they would know. Like, if it's a very tiny court and there's really nobody else to take care of them, then of course they would know, because they're bonded that closely to you and nobody else. But in most situations, that will be the case. Everybody's just going to care for them equally, and they're going to love everybody as their, you know, substitute parents. And that actually kind of helps to keep loyalties where they should be. The offspring of the ruling pair get very closely bonded to the ruling pair. And the grandchildren and everything else get closely bonded to everybody. So that the loyalties are kind of spread farther. Rarely, relatives of the ruling pair who are not their offspring. So this is like siblings of the ruling pair, the parents of the ruling pair, nieces, nephews, that kind of thing. They may already have mates, or they may manage to sneakily find a mate without the murder interfering. The oligarchy do not separate such pairs because they do not wish to lose relatives. However, such pairs may leave of their own accord eventually, as the family grows too large and they wish to start a court of their own. So, let's say, yeesh. Exactly, Coops. Bonding all around. Everybody loves. So let's say Fork here had a sister. And his sister already had a mate when he took over the court, and so she's just living here with her mate. Or she managed to sneakily find one without us interfering. I'm not going to try to separate them because I don't want my sister to leave. I don't want her to be upset with me and try to leave. I will scold them if I catch them nesting when they shouldn't be, but we're going to talk about in a second, like, the ways they could kind of get around that, if they wanted to. So I'm not going to try to separate them just because they've found a mate. Scold them, maybe, but if they stick to their guns, that means they're too closely bonded, and I'm not going to push it, because I don't want to lose my sister. They may eventually leave on their own, though, because it can be kind of stressful to be, you know, an illegal pair in a court and not allowed to just have kids whenever you want them. They may want to start their own court instead. If a pairing like that results in offspring, those offspring must be driven out if there are no grandchildren being currently raised by the court. So if my sister nests and has kids and there are no grandchildren being raised by the court at the time, I gotta run those kids away. If there are grandchildren who are juvenile or younger, then the offspring of those relatives, so like my sister's kids, are going to be pulled together with the grandchildren and raised with them. Unable to tell those whelps apart from the grandchildren, the court will treat them exactly like grandchildren, and they are considered as grandchildren for the purposes of grouping limits. So, what happens is I see my sister's got some kids with her. But because there are grandchildren in the court right now, juvenile or younger, I'm confused and I just think that those are some of them. And for some reason, she's got them with her and she's taking care of them because that's normal. The court is supposed to be communally taking care of those kids. So I don't think anything of it. I see her with some kids. I'm like, oh yeah, she's got some of the grandkids with her. Great, good job. And I'll leave her alone. For the rest of their time in this court, I'm going to consider those whelps to be my grandkids. Because I think that they are. Same thing with adopting. If the court finds whelps of juvenile or younger, they are adopted. If they are currently grandchildren, juvenile or younger, being raised, they count as grandchildren for the purpose of grouping limits and are treated as such. So if I find some child just out in the woods, juvenile or younger, and I have grandkids of that age, I'm like, oh no, one of them wandered off. How dare everyone let them wander so far? Let me just bring them back. Here we go. I'll stick them back in the group. There you go. And now, well, we've got a nice unrelated little adopted baby over there. But I'm going to treat them like my grandchild because I think that they are. And that's the parenting section. Do we have any questions on that? There's always lots of questions in the profile questions channel about parenting, but I don't know if we have any. If offspring is courting in unapproved Latin, will they get scolded but not separated? If I see that you're just courting when you shouldn't be, like with an unapproved Latin, I'm gonna scold you. And if I can separate you, I will. If I see that I can't separate you, like you keep coming back to each other and you keep like crying out in distress and like it's making you really distressed, I am not sure then if I can separate you. So I'm gonna keep an eye on you probably. Maybe I'll follow you. I'll see if you guys have a nest. If you have a nest somewhere, then there's been a proposal. You guys are paired. You just maybe haven't actually had kids yet. So you're not a mating pair yet. It's just like, you know, you guys are pretty bonded. You intend to. Well, I can't break that up. I'm gonna lose my kid. Or my sister or whoever. But if I can separate you, and there's been no proposal, and there's been none of that, yeah, I'm gonna separate you if I can. A general question, not specific to anything. Okay, Tuna, while you send me that question, I'm gonna answer Vox's question. Would adopted babs ever know that they are unrelated? No. No, they wouldn't. They're treated like grandchildren. And they've been raised from very, very young years in the way that grandchildren are raised. So if anything, they're gonna think that they're a grandkid. I can't think of any reason that they would really know. I mean, they might know that they had experiences when they were little, especially if they make it all the way into juvenile and they were by themselves, but yeah, I don't think that they would realize. How would you play in how would you play in general, or how would I do it? How would you play in intersex Latin? That's such a good question. Take care, Canuses. Okay. So, intersex is a particular disorder or a difference that I could give to a creature, for sure, as long as I can play it out in-game. So, you know, I do my research into what that would affect. It's not going to affect a lot of behavioral dimorphism, right? Because Latins don't have it. But it might affect my hormones, it might affect, you know, my fertility and stuff like that. So I would think about all of that as I'm playing them. But other than that, they're literally just going to be normal Latins. They might be, you know, if the hormones are out of whack, they might be a little sickly. If the fertility is low, or not there at all, they might not be able to start a court or those kinds of things. But, you know, if I'm just in a court and I'm born a little sickly and I'm intersex and I have a low fertility, I'm probably going to be fine. As long as I'm not too sickly, I'm probably going to be fine, because if I don't get broody, then I just don't get receptive to pairing. And I'm a happy little clam the way I am. If I do get broody and I have low fertility, well, that's really only a problem if I'm solitary or I'm a ruling pair. Because then my partner might get frustrated with the fact that we aren't having kiddos, or we aren't having kiddos at the rate that we need them. If I'm an offspring or something in a court, then it doesn't really matter, because everybody else is going to have kids and I'm going to help raise them communally, and that's going to satisfy my need for kids. Really the only thing that you've got to keep track of for intersex dinos in the server in general is you have to play behaviors according to your model, and you have to follow limits according to your model. So if your model is male, and you know, the grouping limits say this or that about males, then you have to follow those limits and behaviors. But Latin doesn't have that, so. Yep. It's a lot easier on them to have those differences. Bye, Vox! See ya, see ya! Bye, Symphony! Yeah, if we have any other general questions, now's a good time for those too. Since we've covered all sections now. Woo! We did it, guys! I'm so glad that I made the decision to only cover one section of the profile today. What happens to a UR that thinks they are a grandkid and they pair up